好，各位同事各位朋友，我们开始这个会议啊。然后我们的这个会议的主题呢是生态系统服务与价值的核算。然
We
后
will soon begin our seminar, and this seminar is on the topic of the ecosystem services and value accounting, and we will discuss the development trend of China's forestry, bamboo, rattan, as well as its ecological evaluation and value accounting. We will also talk about the method for the evaluation and other purpose, so that we can promote the application of researches on this topic. And this is also very important for carbon neutrality and carbon peak. And today, I'm so honored to invite 5 panelists and 5 experts to share their opinions, including the farmers' ecosystem value, as well as value accounting, as well as many other topics. For example, the life cycle analysis on the carbon budget for the agriculture and pastoral areas, and as well as the ecological value realization in the Panda National Park community, and also the exploration for the value transformation path of the forestry ecological projects. So the first panelist we are so honored to have with us today comes from the Nanjing Forestry University, Mr. Han Guang or Professor Han Guang. And Dr. Han Guang from Nanjing Agricultural University is the associate professor from the Humanities and Social Development School, and he was graduated from the Ottawa State University in the United States, majoring in agricultural development, and he was also a PhD, post-PhD doctor in the United States, majoring in the research and studies of sustainable agriculture, as well as the dimensions of ecosystem and human society. And his major topics include organic agriculture, the maintenance of water and soils, as well as the sustainable ecosystem. And he has released more than 10 SCI and SCI articles and papers, and as well as a lot of articles on important SCI journals internationally speaking. So first of all, we'll invite Dr. Han Guang to deliver his report. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Mao. Thank you for your introduction. Thank you for your kind words. So I will share my screen with all of you. I believe you can all see my screen, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Mao. My academic research background is in the development of the ecosystem and the farmers' value system. So that might be a little bit different from you because you mainly focus on the ecological development, but for us, we mainly focus on people's behaviors as well as the value system. I used to study in the United States for the postdoctoral degree. So today, my topic was actually based on the research in United States, even though there might be a little bit difference from my between my presentation and the topic of our seminar, but I hope that this will be a warm-up.
My name is Guang Han from Nanjing Agricultural University, and today's topic is farmers' value systems on ecosystem services and the impact on their conservation behaviors. This is the first talk in this morning meeting, and hopefully it's a good warm-up presentations for everyone. So I'm going to use 3 studies to demonstrate how values, decisions, and behaviors really influence farmers' conservation practices. My background is in rural sociology and agriculture extension. So all my studies, I focus on the human dimensions studies. So it's a bit different from the other scholars sit in front of your screen, but hopefully my talk can engage some conversations and bring some commonalities with other research interests. So I'm going to use organic farming, climate change, and cover crops as 3 examples. So start from organic agriculture. we know organic food are good things, right? So it's healthy, it's tasty, and organic agriculture can actually enhance our local farm economies, help to increase soil and water conservation, and also improve the biodiversity. So because this study is conducted in the US, and we look at the US data, so the adoption rate of the organic agriculture is quite low in the US. However, the consumers and the food companies, as well as different organizations, so call to increase organic agriculture in the US. And as a social scientist, the research questions for us is to how to assess farmers' adoption motivations, how to identify their long-term goals, and how to identify their perceived benefit and the challenges associated with the adoption mechanism of organic agriculture. So we are sociologists, so we try to use different theories to help us solve any problems in front of us. So the three theories I use is diffusion of innovation, scaling readiness, self-determination theory, and farm goals and values. The method I use is a mixed method research that include on-farm interviews. So the right-hand picture, the map shows where we collected farm interviews, and we also survey farmers across the states. So qualitative part research has been published in this food journal, and the major five motivations are self, family, and consumer harm, economic cushion, stewardship, legacy, and value, mourning for the loss, as well as the self challenges. And the specific component of different motivations are shown in this table, and you can read this through it. And I'm gonna go through it in the other slides. So first, we found that when farmers adopt organic agriculture, they try to internalize their extrinsic motivation into their intrinsic motivation. So for instance, they started from thinking about their own health, and they maybe experienced some health problems by chemical exposures, so they try to avoid chemicals. And then later they developed these concerns for consumers and public health. Another examples for the motivation internalization is from profitabilities to viabilities. So they first started to adopt organic agriculture because they want to obtain the organic price premium, and they want to bring the additional profitabilities to their farm. However, most of them, they have a small farm acreage, and compare with to the thousands of acres of those large conventional farmers. And they try to use organic farmers as a tool to achieve the long-term viabilities of their farm. So that means they internalize their reward, the tangible reward to their long-term goals. Another motivation is compatibility with values and beliefs. So two value and beliefs stand out. Stewardship legacies. That means they, on their family farm, they have this conservation tradition, and they have their own definition of a success farming, such as harmony with nature, and their own religious belief also has influenced their decisions. They think organic agriculture is a way to validate their religious beliefs. And the other values are cherishing. So they cherishing the biodiversity. That means the ecosystems organic agriculture help them to solve a lot of agronomic problems, such as the pest control, such as weed control, and also increase the soil fertilities by the extensive rotations. And the other cherishing part is attachment to the land, because they say there must be connections between human and the land, and they say organic agriculture is really the way to express their emotional attachment to the land. Another motivation is venturesome characteristics. We found that organic farmers are self-challenge oriented. They refuse to do the same things as most other farmers do. They are also not afraid of the failures and the challenges. And the second part of this study, we used a quantitative method to modeling the relationship between their long-term goals, motivations, the actual adoption decisions, as well as the consequences of adoption, as known as the benefits of organic farming. So we found that in general, farmers are satisfied with the results of organic adoption decisions because they say that the benefits they experience really align with their long-term goals and their motivations. And their long-term goals and motivations decide the organic decisions, but also once the benefits they experienced really provide the feedback and make them confirm these decisions. So their decisions has been enhanced in the process, and their decision will be long-lasting in the long term. The second studies I'd like to share focus on the climate change. So we know that this study has been conducted in the region of upper Midwest of the US, specifically including two states, Ohio and Michigan. And we found that if you see the Great Lake areas, these Great Lake areas has been the temperature has been increased over the past 30, 40 years, and the precipitation rate also be increased. So in general, this area become whiter and hotter. And this area also has experienced frequently experienced the extreme weather events. However, there are a group of large group of specialty crop producers in these areas. They produce a lot of blueberries. They produce a lot of tomatoes, and those those specialty crops, vegetable and the fruits, they are very sensitive to the climate changes, such as temperatures, such as the drought or flooding. So we try to figure out how farmers perceive those climatic risks. So we survey farmers of Ohio and Michigan, and we use structural equation modeling techniques to build this risk perception model for climate change. And we propose that the risk perceptions is influenced by farmers' cognitive and resources capacities. That means their knowledge and resources to deal with climate change. And the risk perception is also influenced by the affectivities. That means their benefit and harm perceptions. And if they experience the extreme weather event, will also influence the risk perceptions. And another explanatory variable is human exemptionism. That means they believe that the humans will be exempt from all those threats because of technology's advances. And the other three construct is productivism. That means farmers try to focus on the productions, try to maximize their yield and profitabilities, try to get the latest or the fancy equipment. Environmentalism focus on the water soil conservation as well as producing nutritious food. Civic madness reflect the farmers' connection to the communities. If they want to be a leader in communities, if they join any organizations, if they have frequently communicated with the farmers. So overall, we found that farmers have a moderate concern about climate change. And we found that more knowledge and resources they have, less risk perceptions they form. And extreme weather events experience increase their climate change risk perceptions, and the exceptionalism beliefs lower their risk perceptions, but the productivism increases risk perceptions of climate change. Lastly, I'd like to share another studies conducted in the US as well. It's about the cover crops adoptions. We know that the cover crops is really good to reduce the soil erosions and increase the soil health and increase the fertility, and also increase biodiversity, reduce the nitrates into the waters as well as the underground waters, and it can be used to suppress weed. And another functions or the benefits of cover crops is carbon sequestrations that may be more related to other speakers' topics. So we think the adoptions of cover crops is not a binary result. It's not just you either adopt or not adopt. We see the adoption process is a linear incremental process, ranges from a small percentage, a simple practice of partial adoptions, to intermediate level adoptions, and to full-scale adoptions with diverse practice with more complex systems. Such as using mixture of varieties of species of the cover crops, interseeding the seeds into the row crops, planting green practice, as well as use livestock grazing cover crops. So we use the latent class analysis. It's a method to identify 5 different groups of cover crops adoptions, including non-adopters, new adopters, experienced adopters, early adopters, as well as previous adopters. When we look at the years of using cover crops across the different groups, this figure shows the years increased, right, across the non-adopters. Almost 0, because they are non-adopters. They do not adopt any cover crops. The 0.05 is average estimation. And the new adopters averagely grow cover crops over 5 years. Previous adopters grow cover crops 6 years, but then they discontinue their adoptions. And the experienced adopters grow cover crops 80 years. And early adopters grow cover crops almost 28 years. Then we look at the percentage of adoptions from non-adopters to experienced adopters. The percentage increased. A very similar trend we found in the number of cover crop species they adopt, from non-adopters to experienced adopters. The number also increased. We also look at the 3 different complex practice of cover crop management, and we proposed 5 actually, but we found that 3 of them are significant predictors in the model. So we found that early adopters had a lower complex adoptions, and the experienced adopters have the highest percentage they adopt a complex practice, and the previous adopters are in the middle, and the non-adopters and new adopters is also has a lower level of adoption complex practices. And then we look at the predictions of the different farmers groups, of the adopter groups, and we found that farming size is a significant predictor. It has a positive effect on the experienced adopters, and the number of cash crop types are positively associated with the new adopters and the early adopters, and other conservation practice also positively related to the previous adopters. We also look at self-efficacy have strong effect on different adopters groups, from new adopters, experienced adopters, early adopters, and the benefit for environment has the positive effect on the early adopters. Benefits for productions has a positive effect on the experienced adopters. And the challenge of risks shows the negative effects on the 2 experienced and the previous adopters. Challenge of resources has a positive effect priority of egoism has a negative effect, and the communication about cover crops has a positive effect on experienced adopters. The conclusions include adopters are not a single unified group, as we identified the 5 different adopters. The adopter status, timing, history, extent, and complexities differentiate adopters themselves along the adopter spectrum that we proposed in the earlier of the slide. Adopters tend to have a larger farming size and more crop types. New adopters face more severe challenges in finding enough resources. Self-efficacy, that means they have the knowledge and resources and the confidence and the skills to really make the adoption intentions into the adoption actions. Perception of cover crops benefit lead more complex cover crops management practice. Information syncing and exchange help farmers to achieve a more complex cover crop management practice. So the recommendations we provide to the policy as well as the practitioners include implement adoption spectrum framework in studying other conversations, and develop extension outreach programs that customize for different groups, and prepare cover crop resources for people who just started this cover crop practice, and also expand the information and networking among farmers and universities and organizations. So pretty much that's my presentation. I don't know how my timing is. 我有没有超时？对。
刚刚好。
Right on time. Thank you, Dr. Han, for the excellent presentation. In the interest of time, we will not have the QA session for each presentation in the interest of time. So thank you very much, Dr. Han. If you have any questions, you can communicate with Dr. Han after the meeting. Thank you. So I will end my screen sharing. We are also very honored to have with us the second presenter, Professor Luan Junwei, PhD Professor of ICBR. He is the expert of International Center for Bamboo Rattan, and also from the Chinese Academy of Forestry, and also committed to the coordinator of the research project. He wears many hats. The technological person in charge of International Center for Bamboo Rattan, and also work as the head of the observation station in the Sanya Bamboo and Rattan Association. Soil biology and the biochemistry committee scholar. He has 2 major research projects during the 13th five-year plan, and also published more than 40 papers on this industry. Now let's invite Professor Luan to start the presentation.
Thank you for your instructions. Thanks a lot for the invitation of Professor Mo. Today I'm going to share some of my recent research. My topic would be unraveling the impacts of environmental change on ecosystem carbon sequestration of a bamboo forest. So can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to show in these 4 aspects. First, I would like to show that as we know that bamboo covers almost 4% of the world forest area, and it is mainly distributed in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And in China, we have 6.4 million hectares of bamboo forests, and among them we have more than 800 bamboo species. And each year we got the increase of the bamboo forest area. So the most important bamboo species in China is moso bamboo, and it accounts for more than 70% of the bamboo forest in China. And moso bamboo also play a very important role in carbon sequestration. And this species is a very fast growth species, and it is a short harvesting circulation. Normally, we only need 3 or 5 years. We can cut them, and this kind of forest type we need to selective cutting. And based on inventory in 2014 in China, we got 18 billion bamboo cones harvested. So the most of bamboo cones was made to be lots of products, like more than 10,000 bamboo products were made of bamboo timber. And in China, in 2020, China bamboo industry has already passed 3,000 billion yuan, and use bamboo to make building materials, pipeline material, and furniture and texture fiber, food and charcoal, and so on. And also, these products become a very important carbon pool. Meanwhile, as we know, the climate change is going on, and global warming actually causes increased drought frequency and intensity, as just Dr. Han mentioned. And it already become a very important aspect of climate change is drought. And drought actually induce forest dieback. This forest dieback has already been reported worldwide, and this forest dieback also causes the decrease of forest carbon sequestration. At the same time, we know the deposition of nitrogen from the atmosphere to forests has increased more than 10 times in the past century. Like from 15 million tons per year in the 1860s to almost 200 million tons by 2005, and is expected to continue to increase. And the heavy nitrogen deposition area coincidentally overlaps with the distribution area of the bamboo forest in China, as you can see from the right 2 panels of the figures. So given that moss bamboo plays important roles in the industry, food supply, and the carbon mitigation, so we would like to know how bamboo responded to potential future drought and ongoing nitrogen deposition, particularly the interaction between drought and the nitrogen deposition. Our question is how the ecosystem processes of carbon sequestration will respond to these 2 environmental changes. We then designed an experiment, a 2-factorial experiment, drought with the 50% throughfall reduction and nitrogen addition with 100 kilogram nitrogen per hectare each year. And in southwest China, Changning County, Sichuan province, this is a typical moss bamboo forest area. And we selected 4 replicated blocks, and each plot size is 20 meters by 20 meters. Here is the bird view of one of the rainfall exclusion experiment sites. And you can see the side view is almost 2 meters high. And 50% of the throughfall rainfall was excluded from the plots and reach a drought stress condition. Then we measured the soil temperature, soil moisture, and the step flow of the bamboo cones and the new shoots. Investigation was also conducted, and also the lithophore decomposition and the soil respiration, soil microbes, and the greenhouse gas emissions was observed. And here's the results is about soil temperature. We did not observe any treatment effects on the soil temperature, but the soil moisture was reduced by almost 50%. And we also observed the new shoot mortality. We find that the drought reduced the new shoot by 10% and led 30% less of survived new shoots. And also drought and nitrogen addition actively impacted on the mortality of new shoots. The reduced mortality implies that nitrogen addition may relieve the drought stress, as you can see. Then we look at the sap flow and the physiological characteristics of the leaves, and we find that the young comes adopted the drought tolerance strategy, while the old comes tended to adopt the drought avoidance strategy. Both the young and old comes of the bamboo are capable of maintaining a relatively stable, sap flow density under drought condition by structural and physiological adjustments. And we also looked at the photosynthesis and the growth. We found that drought decreased the maximum net photosynthetic rate, leaf area index, and basal area increments. And we find that also nitrogen addition elevated the negative drought effects on the photosynthesis and the growth indexes, and it increased the maximum net photosynthetic rates and the leaf area and so on. And we then look at the stoichiometry of the leaf and the fine roots. We find that the drought increased the C2 nitrogen ratio, carbon to phosphorus ratio, and the nitrogen to phosphorus ratio of the leaves, but decreased them in the fine roots. This means that the above ground and the underground show different adaptive strategies to the drought, nitrogenization, and their interaction. And they tried to improve the nitrogen and phosphorus utilization efficiency in leaves or maintaining stable phosphorus utilization efficiency of fine roots. This means the bamboo, they adopted a strategy to cope with the drought stress. And next, we also observed the litter decomposition. We know that litter decomposition process determines the ecosystem carbon and nutrient cycling. We exposed the 4 different litter species of all possible 15 combinations. This represents the litter species richness. In 3 different mesh sizes, this represents the different decomposer functional diversity. And we find that drought reduced that the litter carbon and nitrogen loss by 15 or 12%, and the nitrogen addition exhibited the negative drought effects and reached the 21% carbon loss and 21% nitrogen loss. And this means the future persistent nitrogen deposition will extend the resistance time of litter layer under the drought conditions. And also, we further calculated the net diversity effect, and as we mentioned, we exposed the 4 different litter species, so we can calculate the net diversity effects and find that the species richness and the involving soil fauna could facilitate the decomposition process, as we can see from the right side of the figure. And also we find that involving soil fauna could facilitate the complementary effect and elevate the negative drought effect. But this mitigation effects disappeared after adding nitrogen, as you can see from here, and even exhibited the negative drought effect. After that, we also observed the soil respiration process, and the drought and the nitrogen addition decreased the soil respiration by 5% and 1.2% respectively. And the nitrogen addition accepted the negative drought effect, leading to a 18% decline of the soil respiration. This results consistent with the litter decomposition results. This implying that the benefits for the soil carbon sequestration under the drought and nitrogen deposition future. We further partitioned the components of the soil respiration, and we find that the two components of the soil respiration responded to the drought and nitrogen addition differently, where the rhizosphere respiration responded more sensitively to the drought, while the heterotrophic respiration responded more sensitively to the nitrogen deposition. And the nitrogen deposition led to microbial carbon limitation, hence decreased the heterotrophic respiration, and there's the total respiration. And then we come to the conclusion. First, drought could reduce the biomass carbon sequestration, but bamboo somehow could adapt to the drought and increase the nitrogen availability to elevate the negative drought effects. Second is that drought and nitrogen addition both decelerated the soil carbon cycling, and the nitrogen addition even exacerbated the negative drought effect, implies the favoring on the soil carbon sequestration. So all results could facilitate a whole ecosystem carbon budget estimation on the multiple environmental change conditions. So lastly, I would like to thank to the funding agencies to this research, and thank the Changning National Bamboo Forest Ecological Research Station for the support for this research, and also like to thank to all the graduate students to doing the field work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Mo. This is my presentation.
OK， 非常感谢这个阮教授给我们带来的。
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Luan. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Thank you. And next presentation will be delivered by a researcher Shao Changliang in English.
Professor Changliang is from Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. He built the largest grassland flux observation network in China. Serves as a co-chair of U.S.-China Carbon Consortium. Research interest is carbon budget. He published more than 100 papers in Chinese and English. More than 80 SCI papers, book Grassland Ecosystem of China, and the translated book Intergovernmental Technology. 这个是涡度斜翻差技术啊，这本书。Cited 3,000 times, high index is 27. He is a PI of more than 20 projects such as the NSF China and the National Science and Technology Basic Resources Survey Project. He is one of the earliest flux scholars in China, built the largest grassland flux observation platform in China, and led the research on extreme climate in China. So 非常欢迎我们的这个邵长亮这个博士，请我们邵老师给我们。
Mr. Shao Changliang, welcome. Thank you for your presentation in advance.
Thanks, President Mo's introduction and invitation. I'd like to share our recent research progress in life cycle assessment on carbon footprint in northern China pastoral area. This is Changliang Shao from Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. I want to share two of my recently researches. One is carbon footprint in pastoral areas. And the second is comparing the carbon footprint between agro-pastoral and purely pastoral areas. Let's see some backgrounds. As we know, greenhouse gas, we call the GHG emissions, are a significant contributor to global climate change. In Mongolia are the crucial portion of the Eurasia steppe, the world's largest steppe. Family ranches are an important source of livestock products such as meat, milk, wool, and skin, and their production contributes significantly to GHG emissions. For double carbon goals, it is essential to take into account the carbon footprint in Inner Mongolia grasslands when developing climate change mitigation policies. Let's see some research progress. Recently, there's some good research. One is the carbon footprint of households in urban and rural areas. They found that urban residents have a larger carbon footprint than those in rural areas. And the urban-rural gap promotes inequality in household carbon footprints. The other research found that converged household carbon footprint in China. They found there are large inequalities between household carbon footprint within and across China's provinces. Urban residents have a carbon footprint which is 2.5 times greater than that of rural residents. That other research, they estimated carbon footprint of crop production in China in 2014. For the wheat, they found higher in the northern west than in the southeastern provinces. For the meat, they found on-farm N2O emissions from nitrogen fertilizer application is the most significant sources in all provinces. For the rice, they found high levels in the northern provinces as well as in the southern provinces. Though that some research on carbon footprint, but indeed for the grassland, there's fewer research using life cycle assessment. Now let's see some general ideas on life cycle assessment. We call it LCE. Is a tool for evaluating the energy consumption and environmental impact of a product processed from its raw material through its production, transport, use the final disposal. We call it from the cradle to grave analysis. For the right figure, we can see the number of LCE papers published is growing rapidly, more than 5,000 per year nowadays. Overseas LCE databases mainly include EcoInvent, that's from Switzerland, and ELCD, that's European Life Cycle Literature Database, and the Gabi database, that's from Germany. The Chinese Reference Life Cycle Database we call the CLCD, founded by Sichuan University and continually updated by Eco-Environment, is China's first publicly released and widely used. We conducted the study on family ranches in Hulenbeer and Ulanqabu in Mongolia during 2019 and 2022, gathered over 500 questionnaires to obtain first-hand information on local production and living business activities. The study area is Inner Mongolia pastoral area. Method is life cycle assessment. The subject is carbon footprint of family ranches. Data is survey data and some database data. We considered the comprehensive and full service life cycle assessment. We also used the 2006 IPCC method to calculate emission factors in conjunction with research data. Structure equation modeling, SEM method, was used to evaluate multiple impact factors. Let's see our first study, carbon footprint in pastoral area. The study purpose is using LCA method to quantitatively determine the GHG emissions of household ranches in Hulenbeer, China, based on two factors: the production of mutton sheep and household living. We considered three GHG gases: methane, CO2, and N2O. Some key findings: we found that greenhouse gas emissions from the live weight of 1 kilogram mutton sheep is 25.4 kilogram CO2 equal. This number is similar, but a little bit higher than other results. That's from Tibetan Plateau, Spain, United Kingdom, USA, and Chile. We also found the Herdman's greenhouse gas emissions normally no more than 100 tons CO2 equal, mostly between 10 to 80 tons CO2 equal. That almost 29%, that's between 20 to 30 tons CO2 equal. 21% between 10 to 20 tons CO2 equal, and 18%, that's between 30 to 40 tons CO2 equal. We also found that mutton sheep production shed 69% GHG emissions from family pasture, and the household life shed another 31%. Among these, we found the intestinal methane shed 50% GHG emission, and the cow yield shed 20%. The manure management system shed 17%. Others normally no more than 10%. Among the emissions from the mutton sheep production chain, the highest value, that's 72%, were observed from the intestinal methane emission, and followed by manure management system, that's 24%. We also found direct emissions from household activities are greatest from the use of coal, that's 65%, while only 5% from electricity and 0.5% from natural gas. The SEM results demonstrated that economic and dependency variables played key roles in shaping the household GHG emissions. We also found that the number of sheep and household income was a major influence on economic level, and thus had a significant impact on GHG emissions of pastoral households. The other result is household GHG emissions were significantly positive and linearly correlated with the number of mutton sheep. second, let's see the second research comparing the carbon footprint between agro-pastoral and purely pastoral area. This research purpose is based on our survey data, precisely assess and analyze the GHG emissions of mutton sheep from family ranches in Hailar district. That's an agriculture and pastoral mix, and Chimbarhu Bana, a purely pastoral area of Hulunbuir in Mongolia. We found that similar intestinal methane emissions were the largest source of emissions, followed by emissions from manure management system. We also found significant differences between the agro-pastoral and purely pastoral areas in both intestinal methane and manure management system emissions. Using 1 kilogram live weight of mutton sheep as a functional unit, the results showed that the GHG emissions intensity of 1 kilogram live weight of mutton sheep is 26.74 kilogram at the agro-pastoral area, while only 13.88 kilogram at purely pastoral areas. In fact, the administrative area of Hulunbuir's agro-pastoral area is much smaller than the purely pastoral area. But the annual GHG emissions from mutton sheep were much higher, which was mainly related to the larger sheep number in the agro-pastoral area than those from purely pastoral areas in 2008 to 2017. There's some policy and research recommendations. One, we need to utilize the natural resource advantages of purely pastoral areas to scientifically improve mutton sheep breeding, where we need to enhance mutton sheep breeding efficiency in agro-pastoral areas. Two, we need to conduct research on emission reduction technologies that contribute significantly to GHG emissions, such as intestinal methane emissions, and improve livestock management to provide scientific and technological support for reducing GHG emissions. And third, there are very little researches on GHG emissions from sheep farming in China's pastoral areas. It is suggested to draw on established foreign experience and to develop evaluation methodologies and localized databases that are appropriate for China's national circumstances. Thank you very much. That's all my presentation. Thanks, President Moore. Thank you.
非常感谢这个邵教授这个给我们带来的这个精彩的。
Thank you, Professor Shao, for the excellent presentation. In the interest of time, if you have any questions, you can communicate with Professor Shao after the meeting. Once again, thank you very much for the presentation. The next presentation will be given by Professor Ge Zhiwei from Nanjing Forestry University. Professor Ge Zhiwei is the director of Carbon Neutrality Research Institute and also Secretary General of the Biology and Environmental Committee. He focused on the carbon circulation and carbon neutrality. He also chaired many big research projects from the Ministry of Ecology. He also published 20 SI paper. Now let's invite Professor Ge to give the next presentation. Thank you. Thank you, moderator, for the nice introduction. Now I will share with you my presentation. The exploration for the value transformation path of forestry ecological products, and also share with you our understanding on this project and related efforts we've made. My presentation will focus on the following 4 points. The first point is the brief introduction about the development of ecological products from the initial proposal of the definition until the development of the products. Also, we will look at the forestry ecological carbon products, how unique are they? And the third topic is the issues of value realization. Actually, in this process, there are many problems we encountered in the real work, and we will give you an introduction on that. The fourth point is the relevant work and research projects we've had. First of all, for ecological products, at the beginning, back in the year 2010, we had learned such a definition on ecological products and also many content on the ecological service, etc. As we are moving forward, the ecological well-being, especially after the year 2011, academician Wang Jinyuan proposed that the ecological products refer to natural elements that maintain ecological security, ensure ecological regulation function, and provide a good living environment. We need to promote the ecological products on an extensive manner. In Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Fujian, they have all carried out various research efforts to explore the way to commercialize the value of ecological products. Actually, the background is similar to ecological compensation. For ecological compensation, we mentioned earlier, it involves 3 features. The first one is a low compensation standard. The unit price is very low. For example, for 1 mu of land, the compensation price is only less than 100 RMB. So this will be very difficult for the sustainable development of the forest. Number 2 is a very singular compensation method, and the pressure is on the local management and the government shoulders. The third one is the very limited compensation objects. For example, there are only some forest land with the conservation efforts, which neglected the participation of local people. So to guarantee the use of ecological resources, we, to a certain level, violated the principle of who pay for the use of the forest land. So under such circumstances, our government have proposed the different documents on establishing and improving the value realization mechanism of ecological products. In those documents, they emphasize the support for exploration and innovation by establishing the ecological products evaluation platform. So the big framework has been developed already in this process in China. As for ecological well-being, as we promote the value realization mechanism, we rely on the carbon trading as a pillar and a lever to promote the ecological compensation process. So for the ecological products, it involves different aspects. If you're interested, you can look to the documents from different governments on that. I will not elaborate too much, including the water conservation, etc. There are many value evaluation area with a challenge for calculation. They use the cost replacement method for the economic calculation and evaluation. But one indicator is very complete and mature, also widely used by IPCC.
For carbon evaluation, and we have also further promoted this process to address the issue of carbon. And carbon is highly relevant to ecological products and as well as its valuation. For example, the protection or the conservation of biodiversity and carbon sequestration. And we have done a lot of research in a lot of sectors represented by the Forest Control Survey and Research. And then we realized that a hybrid forest can create a better value, which was released in the science article or the science journal. And this is actually a very special product, the ecological product, and has to be matched with methodologies and frameworks for its calculation and appraisal, which has to be further improved. And if we consider more about it, if we could think of it more about it, water soil conservation are all about its balanced relation or the win-win relation between biodiversity and carbon sequestration. And the ecological products are all related to the biodiversity. So this is a very important grab for us to tackle the issue of carbon sequestration so as to further and better evaluate the ecological values of these ecological products. And a lot of people have done a lot of research on the natural forests, and so has our team. For example, in the north part of Suzhou, and we have conducted our BEF research for the artificial forest, and we've put into place 125 research stations, as well as the observation over a lot of species to figure out differences between natural forests and artificial forests. And the purpose of our research is that we want to put into place a measurement system for carbon indicators so that we can better understand the value of ecological products and do the evaluation of this product. Another aspect for the ecological development is about carbon neutralization or carbon neutrality. But I won't focus on the background because I believe you're all familiar with the background from the Tokyo Protocol to the Paris Agreement and so on. We are trying to realize the goal of carbon neutrality. And here I just want to say, or to talk about the role played by our forests, and IPCC has released a lot of reports mentioning the importance of forestry, which is very cost-effective and a very good approach to help us to realize carbon neutrality. So forestry is very important and has a very high expectation of carbon neutrality. And for example, we have the CDM, a clean development mechanism, so that we can promote the cooperation between developed countries and developing countries. But due to many factors, we have not go along this path very smoothly during this process. And at a lot of times, on a lot of occasions, we only stopped at pilot projects. As for the carbon transaction for the world, there are several aspects I believe you have to pay attention to. For carbon neutrality, developing countries and developed countries are different. But what is the difference? But I think the more important issue is to promote the research on carbon neutrality. And just like academician Jin Zhonglin said, that the focus of our research should be how to realize carbon neutrality and how to help developing countries, including China, to pursue economic development and at the same time realize the economic transformation, reducing carbon emission, so that we can hit the target of carbon neutrality. And during this process, we have to march on this path, but this path will be full of difficulties and challenges. So this is the first aspect. The second is, what is the exact role of forestry in this process, or what is the proportion, or how much contribution can forests make? A CCR and the national carbon exchange mechanism or the market proposed about 5% or 8%, but no more than 8% for that contribution. But what is the percentage of the contribution made by forestry? According to the Agriculture Organization of the UN, it said that their terrestrial ecosystem offset 30% of carbon emission in the atmosphere each year, and forests contribute about 80%, and that is about 1/4 of all the carbon emission in the world. But according to different articles, different researches, we can have different figures. And recently, we can also see that that might be about 45% in China for China's land, because China has made a lot of material and manpower inputs to that, and the Beijing Journal Academician also released an article from the SCA saying that that might be about 70% to 20%. So this is about the evaluation process during which forestry must be playing a very important role, but that should be more than 10%, no less than 10%, I think. And I will spare you of more details. I just want to say that there might be some deviations in our cognitive awareness. And next is the management of the forestry. Conventional ideas believe that good forestry should have a lot of trees, and especially these arbors, but that might be not very good for carbon sink and carbon sequestration. And actually, for the underground carbon sequestration, it might take about 60% to 80%, but that is even more than the above ground ratio by photosynthesis. And I also believe that we have to make up for the shortcomings in the practice and management about how to guide this practice, how to guide this process. We have to have a clearer picture of that. During this process, we want to realize the value of the eco products featuring the carbon products. But the first is who will fund this project, who will pay for it, to put it simply. I believe that those polluters should be held responsible to make the payment. So how can we establish a market mechanism to guide business behaviors, to guide businesses and companies to take this action? And sometimes we might ask them to do something, but we want to guide them because that is in line with a market economy. And also the pricing on the carbon pricing. I don't think we now have a unified price for carbon, because that is not appropriate, especially considering different backgrounds for the development of forestry in different regions. If we unify this price of carbon, there might be a lot of shocks, negative shocks, so that there will be a lot of challenges, just like what happened when land was transferred in the past in China. And we want to introduce relevant policies to encourage local governments to play a major role. And this is also the requirements really in the documents released by the Ministry of Ecology. Number 3 is that we have to take a lot of measures to promote education and training programs so that the public will be more aware of carbon sequestration and its importance. It does not mean that we have to plant a very good tree. It means that we have to adopt an economic approach and to increase public awareness. That is a very important challenge for us to address ecological and environmental issues. And the 4th problem is that in China, the forest planting has received consistent efforts. And I won't take too much of my time to talk about its achievements, but I just want to say that we have also paid a high price. And this hard-gain achievements is reflected by the practice or by the reality. But now we don't have a lot of land to plant forests. So we have to focus on improving the quality of forests and tapping into the potential for carbon sequestration in the forest, and we have to better manage forest to increase carbon sequestration capacity. And this increase of carbon sequestration capacity cannot be only limited by the measurements indicators of IPCC. And I believe that the forest management have to consider a lot of factors. For example, they are fireproof. That is also a very important part for us to ensure carbon sequestration, as well as the prevention of insects. But this has not been measured against or recognized by the carbon system. And I think we have to focus on all these issues in our practice and in our work. And next is about the GEP evaluation. Our evaluation process has carbon as a priority because it has to be counted in the unit of currency. And I believe you can also understand this. If we can calculate its value, that must be difficult because it has a fixed price. How to do it, how to transform it. And carbon has another advantage because we can calculate its quota. To address all these issues deserve our great efforts. And we want to match carbon neutrality target with carbon sequestration and many other aspects. We are still exploring how to do that, and would like to share with you several observations. And for example, our theoretical framework, we have 3 principles we want to emphasize on the conservation of the eco-services and ecosystem. And we have to engage a third party for the supervision so that we can increase the ecological value of this whole system. And I believe this should be a very important approach. And second is we have to ensure long-term supervision so that we can maintain and even increase the ecological project's value. And third is we have to establish the regional ecological project value transformation platform. And I believe many locations, for example, some local governments and cities in Jiangsu, as well as the state-owned farms, are doing pilot projects to see how can we establish a market mechanism to support the transformation of the ecological value. During this process, we have to further promote the establishment and development of the framework of methodology. Well, basically, we are approaching this issue from 3 perspectives. The first is we have to increase the carbon sequestration and to ensure its stability. And if you know about the studies of soil, you must know that planting trees can transport some new materials, organic matters into the soil so that these microorganisms in the soil can get nutrition. And then this carbon in the soil might be dissolved and might be released. And this effect is a result of the forest planting. And this might undermine the stability of carbon sequestration. So in Jiangsu forest and wetland, we want to increase the stability of carbon reservoir. And we are doing such an evaluation whose indicators have not been fully considered in previous evaluation framework. This is what we have to make up for in the future. This is what we have to explore into the future and how to realize the composite, biological, and ecological effects and to increase this value. Number 2 is about the evaluation methods of the ecological carbon projects, how to more precisely and more comprehensively conduct such an evaluation. And this process is not only about the establishment of and the promotion of an indicator system, and we have to establish a regional, rapid, and fast evaluation system. We know that the conservatory is very important, or the conservation is very important, but it comes with a very high cost. For example, a lot of inputs of time, manpower, and materials, a very high cost. And many local governments cannot support it financially speaking. So during this process, how should we use the genome sequencing technology to establish environmental DNA sequencing mechanism to rapidly evaluate the ecosystem? That is another research line for us. And another point is to build the regional forest and wetland carbon sequestration evaluation system at a faster pace. It means that in different regions, we have to focus on the most basics of the ecosystem and the study of ecosystem, whether it is the projection of productivity per unit or per acre. We have to calculate the accumulation of the biomass, and we have to consider the laws, the regional laws in this sector. And if we can match it with a latitude or the region so as to establish some fast evaluation mechanism, in the future, different places and local governments can run such an evaluation on carbon sequestration in forests at a low cost.
So we can improve the EDNA carbon sequestration system and also the ecological products evaluation standard, so as to construct the relevant system, which is not the traditional forestry monitoring system. So the carbon storage, carbon stability will be the very solid foundation for the value evaluation and provide support for the setup of the future system. This is the second area we focus on and also achieved very big progress. The third area is how to combine with the forestry economic theory to innovate and construct a very innovative compensation system to ensure the commercialization. So what shall we compensate for? Through various models, we calculated that for the forestry, ecological products, and carbon products, the overall value evaluation, we want to emphasize the value conservation and value growth. For the conventional management of forestry, the direct economic output is relatively lower, which is not given enough priority. And another area is very important. How to realize the economic value is a very serious topic to be solved. We can now seize on the opportunity for the promotion of value realization of ecological products, especially using carbon as an opportunity to construct the participants and the theoretical framework, as well as the regional forestry product realization system. So from the three areas, number one is to start from the technical perspective on the carbon storage. Before that, we had accumulated many experience, and also we had many observatory experiment and also the exploration on the forest operation, etc., which had very great benefits on all of us in terms of calculation. We focus on the precise measurement of the system. The last point is how to transform the value. The transformation of the value needed to be focused on the behavior that is contributive to the setup of the system. So these are the three research topics we are engaged in today. In the interest of time, that's all for my sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ge. Thank you, Professor Ge, for the excellent presentation. We have one last presentation, the last one but not the least. For the last presentation, it will be given by another professor. The previous presentations are focused on the researches we've done, but the last presentation will be given by Professor Zhang Yubo. The background of Professor Zhang is the research-based practitioner. He is engaged in some research projects, and he also accumulated many experiences in the everyday practice. So Dr. Zhang Yubo is from Forestry University and also visiting scholar at Duke University, and he dedicated himself to the protection of giant panda and also applied and granted many patents. He has received the utility patent. So the last presenter, Dr. Zhang Yubo, who will share with us the presentation, life cycle analysis on carbon budget in agriculture and pastoral areas. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to share with you my perspective on the ecological value in a small garden of giant pandas. So first of all, let's take a look at the background of this presentation. At the fourth survey, we learned there are more than 1,800 wild pandas in 49 counties in 3 provinces. In those 49 counties, one of them is Pingwu County. In this county, the number of wild pandas totaled 335, the greatest number among all those 49 counties. But in this county, all these years, they are the poverty-stricken counties in 2019. As we all know, in 2019 and 2020, all the poverty alleviation efforts are made in those poverty-stricken counties, and for the economic development is still behind other counties. So here, this is the widow village. In this widow village, there are so many wild pandas, and in 1990s, some villagers are engaged in the hunting of pandas and sell the skin of the panda. Then in a campaign, all those young people, almost all the young people were arrested because they were more or less engaged in hunting of pandas. Then the village is called Widow Village. This is a very extreme cases. In this village, what those who are left behind are the widows or seniors or children. After more than 10 years, many people have returned back to the hometown. I also communicated with them. I asked them that, don't you know that poaching and hunting pandas are violating the law? They say, yes, they know, but they are poor. They can only live by the mountains and the rivers. Actually, living by the mountain and rivers is not wrong, but what matters is how to utilize the resources in your hometown. So I believe this is a very economical reason. The protection of giant panda face the biggest challenge, which is poverty. Then here comes the problem. Can we integrate the protection of giant panda with the economic development? Can we have a win-win outcome from combining the two topics? In the panda garden, can we make sure the coexistence between nature and wild pandas? I remember when I delivered my doctor paper, I know in this place, it has a history of protecting panda, but the problem in this village is that they have not grown into a very big industry because of the hive. You can see this is the traditional hive they use. They just dig a hole inside the trunk. Then the honeys will come in and build their own nest. But when they harvest the honey, they will affect, when we harvest the honey, we will affect and damage the little baby bees. So it's hard for the honeys to survive the winter. You can see this is the image of the hives. Only maybe 50% of bees will survive the winter. Then in the year 2018, because of the dark and extreme weathers, the total number of bees reduced by 80%. And then I look at some document I discovered. This type of hive, we call it a matrix hive, which is particularly suitable to the local environment and the species of the bee. And for this hive, it's easily operated for the local villages. As we all know, in local villages, only those seniors were left behind in villages. So in those villages, these hives, if it's not very complicated to use, those complicated hives are hard to be used by local senior villages. We always ask ourselves, what is good technology? There are so many advanced technologies invented by the scientists, but the good technology are those who can easily accepted by local people. For those Pinggu County, the product that can be readily used and also very cost effective, that is the good technology. Also, it should be easier for the management. Those are the three standards for good technology: good honey, then easy to use. For the first year, many local villagers come around to look at how we harvest the honey. In terms of the quality and volume production of honey is much better than a traditional hive in local area. See, if you look at this image, you want to lick it yourself because it seems very yummy and delicious. And for the farm, it provided the free of charge training courses to local villagers. It has turned into a natural training base. In big cities, many parents brought their kids to the local villages to generate more income for the local poor people. Through years of development, we discovered that the number of giant pandas increased in local county, and also we see the increase the herd of pandas, and also we have more encounters with giant pandas in this wild environment. You know that in the past several years, the giant pandas even went to the highway. Another obvious result is that the income of the local farmers in the local area, according to the statistics, the average annual income is about 12,000 RMB. The average 1,000 monthly income. And for those beekeepers, their average annual income is twice the size of the average income for the local people, which is 27,880 RMB. So that's all for my sharing. Because we are very tight schedule, so that's all for my sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for the excellent sharing. Many theories, many technologies needed to be implemented. And also, this is the final way of realizing the value. Also, we discussed so many advanced technology and theories.
And we have to return back to our topic, and that is how to realize the valuation and how to provide relevant services, how to do value accounting, how to generate social economic benefits. And we have to combine all these aspects together. So we are so glad to invite 5 speakers, very experienced in research, in practice, in innovation, and so on. They have made a lot of academic and practical achievements. We have a lot of experts, scholars to make these 5 presentations. Well, due to the time limit, we have not set Q&A following each and every presentation. And if you have any questions about our presentation, or if you are interested in some special key points in this presentation, please contact these experts and speakers so that you can have an in-depth communication with these 5 speakers. So thank you again. Great thanks to 5 speakers as well as all technicians, all the working staff, as well as all the participants, including the interpreters. Thank you for your hard work. And also great thanks to our audience. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for participating in this seminar. And now we will close this session. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thank you for your support.